us which have been wounded and hurt. Um, but all of that, it's all us. And together we form this beautiful universe. Um, so for this invocation, you may close your eyes. If you want to, you can turn off your screen. It's totally up to you. But I would like you to close your eyes momentarily. And as you close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath. Gentle, easy breath. And just follow the path of the breath. Feel, just feel how the breath moves in your body as you breathe in through your nostrils and the breath moves and goes all the way down into your stomach. And as you observe your breathing, bring your attention to your heart center. And if you want to, you may put your hand on your heart. And with every breath, just fill it up with love. All of us here are divine beings. We are beautiful, eternal souls. And we chose challenging lives to learn about our true nature, which is divine, unconditional love. Let us remember who we really are and send love to all our incarnations, those in the past, the present incarnation, and the ones to come in the future. In each lifetime, we are born into new circumstances. We choose different challenges, and we learn and we grow. We grow spiritually. And let us send love to all those aspects of us who took on those challenges and might have endured pain and trauma as a result. No matter whether we chose to play a villain or a hero, we are all created with love and are worthy of divine love. Feel a deep comfort and peace spreading into every part of your being with every breath. And feel this peace spreading into your mind. And feel the love for everyone here and the love for yourself. Love for Mother Earth, love for this universe. And allow this comfort, this feeling of love to relax you. And now take a deep breath in and let go. And when you feel ready, you may open your eyes. Wonderful. And now I would like to introduce the amazing founder of this book club, Carole Louie. First, Carole is an incredible friend, an amazing mentor and role model, and she lives and breathes unconditional love and peace. And I have learned so much from her in the time we have known each other. And I'm really, really grateful for that time that we've spent together and the time that we will spend together. In addition, Carole is very accomplished in her divinely chosen path. She leads meditations, hypnotherapy sessions, is a soul medium, a spiritual consultant. She is also the creator of the advanced regression technique. Along with this club and the jewel in the crown, if I may say so, she created the Reincarnation Symposium. Let us welcome Carole to share a bit about what led her to past life regression therapy, the symposium, and this wonderful book that we are going to be talking about today. Welcome, Carole.
Unmute. Thank you, Smita. I'm trying to do two things at one time here. What a journey this has been. As I've said a few times, I never in my wildest dreams would have dreamt that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, 33 years ago, when all of this started for me. And believe it or not, I didn't really give reincarnation a thought that long ago, 33 years ago. And it was my father's presence at his own funeral that awakened me to this whole reincarnation process. At first, I was getting over my fear of ghosts because there he was. I knew he wanted to talk to me. And because my father was Buddhist, I then thought about, wonder what he's doing in the bardo. And I also wondered what his next life was going to be. And then I thought about, wait a minute, you know, I've tried to live a pretty conscientious life, but I've made a few mistakes here and there. And I thought about, I wonder what my next life would be based on those things. And that started it all. And now that many years later, not only did I learn about the in-between life from my father, but I also learned about many, many lives from the memories that I had of other lives. One including my father and my current life mother in another lifetime in China, and we had different roles in that lifetime. So that really showed me our connection and that we were bound to finish some unfinished business that we, took on in that lifetime. So it made me determined, get as many lessons as I can now, because they will come back, and we'll have to get them sooner or later. This book, Unstuck in Time, and I'm not at my home, so I forgot to bring a copy of it. But Unstuck in Time, for those of you who have seen Kurt Vonnegut's or read the book, Slaughterhouse-Five, that line comes from that story, and where Billy Pilgrim was what he called unstuck in time. And I felt like that was a really great way to describe what I was experiencing, because the weirdest things would happen during the ordinary day. and it would trigger memories from other lifetimes. And as soon as I opened up to remembering, it was like a lot of players from other lifetimes started bombarding my present lifetime. And so I knew that, oh, there's something to this. I have to figure out how to work this out. And fortunately, I had a really wonderful regression therapist in the very beginning who helped me not only with the trauma from this lifetime, the past of this lifetime, which I feel like is sort of a prerequisite to remembering past lives. You know, deal with the stuff that you've been served up in this lifetime. And doing that, now you're more mature, you're ready to experience the stuff from other lifetimes. And in fact, what I learned was some of the things that I got triggered in this lifetime, which didn't seem appropriate reactions to what was happening, were actually because those events triggered memories from other lifetimes that were kind of traumatic. So I wanted to share with you, I don't know if I can, yeah. Okay, I wanted to share with you a visual. Oh, and where did it go? Oh, there it is. Um, So writing was not the easiest process for me. And when I began remembering past lives, one of the first lives that I remembered was Anne Marie, who was a child who was part of the Holocaust. And I had so much memory from her that I wrote a little short story, and I thought I'd actually get out of writing or this bigger thing that I felt like I was going to be writing. And I said to the universe, if this short story gets published easily and effortlessly, that I would go ahead and I'd continue working on the bigger project. And lo and behold, it was a friend of mine connected me with Rabbi Yonason Gershom, who I read his book, uh, Beyond the Ashes. And he had been counseling people from all over the world who were remembering past lives. This was in the mid-90s.
Huh.
And so I contacted him about my past life, and she told him that I had written a story. So he wanted to read my story. I sent it to him, and so it is one of the stories that he used in From Ashes to Healing, so the book on the far left. And I knew that the universe won, that I had made this bargain with the universe. And so from then on, I started keeping very extensive notes about every spontaneous memory, every journey, every meditation that included memories of past lives. So imagine that 30 years of notes to fall back on. And one of the interesting things in reading those notes was that the consistency, the tone of voice, more details would be added with each memory. But it was quite a learning experience. When I began thinking about really writing and publishing on my own, I was taking writing classes and publishing classes too. And in one of my writing classes, this story about Emily Elizabeth came up. She turned out to be a fictional character, but a composite of some lifetimes that were not the most pleasant. I'll have to say that. But it was a great experience. So that was my first endeavor into writing for myself, publishing for myself. And then, of course, I had to share the story about my conversations with my father's spirit after I learned how to talk to him and how it guided me back to the villages. And then that was a stepping stone to learning more about my a branch of our family, which was the Lay family architects, or Yangtze Lay is what they're called. And then that led to Unstuck in Time. So I wanted to show you what happened the moment I said to the universe, who were those ghosts I was so afraid of all my life? And then I meditated. I have a large cocktail table, and I meditate at that table. And all of a sudden, these characters showed up, and a few others, but these were the main ones. And so these are the characters I settled on for the book. So we have Lily was the very first one to show up, and I'll never forget her words. Very first words to me were, "What is there to fear of death, but rather fear not living?" It took me a lot of years to really understand what she was talking about, but very powerful words indeed. And then, as I said, Anne Marie, the girl from the Holocaust, showed up. James, who was the brother of Jesus. That one freaked me out in the beginning, but I got comfortable with him after a while. Mei Ling, who is a young Chinese girl that was the lifetime that connected my mother, my father, and myself. Josie was a flapper in the Roaring Twenties, and she was probably one of the most destructive lifetimes that I remember living. And then there was Caroline, who was a turn of the century Victorian woman in San Francisco, California. Marco Antonio de Dominias, he's one of the few that I know the full name for. He was an archbishop in Italy, then he went to England, then he went back to Italy, and he eventually was taken in front of the Inquisition, died before the trial was over, but they carried on the trial after his death, and then took his body and strung it up to a cross and burned it with his books. And then one of my very favorites, Lei Jingshou, that I mentioned earlier, who is an ancestor, but also a past life. And so this is kind of how they showed up during my meditation. And as I learned more and more about them, now you can see where they came to life for me. They would show me the surroundings, and as an interior designer, I picked up right away the periods that they were in, and so it was fascinating to me to watch them. I'll stop the screen share so we can all be together. So I know many of you have read the book, and I'm certainly open to any questions that you have about any of them. So I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Well, my question would be, I see you have been a male once.
3 times out of the
Okay,
8
so,
are in the book.
yeah. My other question is, have you had future lives? Because, as you know, I have regressed people who have. I mean,
Yes, in fact, I have, Lynn Sparrow was one of our speakers at last year's symposium, and I went to a conference that she was facilitating a workshop, and she took us into a future life. In that lifetime, she doesn't like to do close the same lifetime. She likes to go way out. In that lifetime, it was so far out that I saw myself as an interpreter for extraterrestrials with earthlings.
Hmm.
So that was one future. Now, I progress very easily. And so I have actually seen where Lynn didn't like to, this was a group, so I can understand why she wouldn't want to do a group. But I've seen the future of this lifetime ahead of it happening. And so that's been really fun. It's one of the reasons why I moved to Richmond, Virginia, was because my grandchildren's spirits came to me and told me to come. And so I closed up.
Couldn't turn them down.
No, I couldn't turn them down at all. It was difficult leaving the beach, and I had a thriving design business in Naples, Florida, but I knew that there was a reason that I needed to come up here, and that was just amazing for me to be part of their lives. Now they're teenagers, so they're very busy with their lives, but to be apart from the very, very beginning. And let's see, I see Leslie has her hand raised. Do you have a question, Leslie?
Yes, I do. When you talked about seeing the future of this life, I wondered to what extent and maybe in what ways, if you know, that affects your day-to-day moving through, your experiences, and possibly how that compares to what you learned from past life regression.
That's a great question. I feel that we are not shown the future unless it is important for us. That, all of my work is about how can this benefit my soul and those around me. And ever since I accepted my gift as a medium, that this has just been my intention all along. And of course, I had to carry that same feeling, into my regression work. I also, on my mother's side, I'm also part Native American. And so I've looked at the shamanic traditions and particularly the vision quest. And I feel like vision quests are similar to progression. So I've kind of merged the two. And when I get a vision of something, then it gives me such a focus, a direction about what I need to do to allow that vision to happen. And maybe as an interior designer, I was being primed for that very thing, because in an interior design, it was like I could see into my clients' minds and know what they really wanted to accomplish. And I really designed for my clients. I was not one of those designers that you'd walk into something I did and you'd say, oh, that's a Carole Louie design. I know designers who are like that, but that was not my thing. I really designed for my clients. And when their family walked in and said, oh, Mom and Dad, this is so you, that made my day. And so, again, I feel like that kind of trained me as a visionary. But it's so funny, in interior design, when I was working in interior design, I was very stressed, and I had the monkey mind like so many people do. And, I was, talk about multitasking. I was multitasking left and right, and I was making myself ill. So what happened was I developed what looked like chronic fatigue syndrome. And what I did to help with that was meditation. So meditation really became a foundation for me, and I highly recommend meditation to anyone, because it gives you a quality of life, for one thing. But it really was wonderful foundation for me going into hypnotherapy and regression therapy. So I hope that answers your question, Leslie. People ask the same question about past life. What's the point of remembering a past life? You have a hard enough time with this lifetime. And I found that remembering the past has had so many benefits for the present. For instance, you wouldn't think about walking around with your arm broken, would you? You do something to get it fixed. And if we walk around with unfinished business or traumas from the previous lives, it doesn't allow us to be fully present in the current life. So I have found it to be a fantastic way to help me heal, to be present, as well as to clear the path. I feel like it's like a gardener, that I'm pulling the weeds, I'm tilling the soil, I'm planting the seeds, and I'm making ready for the future that I'm creating. So Darcy has a question. Go ahead, Darcy.
Well, I just wanted to mention that when you talked about the one regression where you had your family members switched around, and I had that happen to me, but I haven't talked to anybody else that has occurred, and I just found it very interesting. Has that happened to you more than once?
It has. So I mentioned the one with Mei Ling, who in that lifetime, I was the concubine, and my mother was what was called the Tai Tai. Tai Tai in the Chinese culture means the number one wife. In the Chinese culture back in the day, multiple wives and concubines were allowed. And then my father was the patriarch. And in this lifetime, it was very interesting because my mother I found out just a few years ago that my mother and father were actually not married. So in essence, she would have been a concubine in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And my dad was born in 1910, so they were still having concubines in that day and age. But and then Caroline is the other one that in Caroline's lifetime, and this still confuses me a little bit today. In that lifetime, Caroline's sister, whose name was Persephone, and we called her Prissy, that was my sister in that lifetime, was my daughter in this lifetime. My daughter, oh no, wait, that was Sissy. The oldest child was Persephone, and that is my sister in this lifetime. Then Caroline's son was Jacob, and my grandson in this lifetime is the reincarnate of Jacob. So one of the first things one of the reasons why his energy was so strong in calling me to come to Richmond, and because he knew that this was a reunion, and I was able to help him. As soon as that information came up for us, I was able to help calm him and to let him know that we reunite. It was so funny because when he was very little, he had norovirus. It's a really bad stomach virus. And so I went to the hospital. He was so bad that they took him to the hospital. I went to the hospital, and as soon as I got there, he lit up. He had been so ill the whole day, but he lit up, and even the nurse noticed this. And then it was so funny because then he had a blowout, because part of norovirus is diarrhea. So he had a blowout, and I was holding him, and I said, okay, I'll just put him over here on the crib and change him. And my daughter I guess feeling like I'm the mother, I should be doing this. She moves over as if to, take over changing him. He literally pushed her away, and we had to put a pillow between the two of them. He wouldn't let her touch him.
Weird.
And yeah, and so a part of him was remembering as well. And then that's when I knew I needed to let him know that, oh, I'm here, but in this lifetime, I'm your Grammy. And Jenny is your mother. So I needed to make that clear to him so that he wouldn't push her away like that.
Uh,
And yeah, so reunions are fun. Thank you for
uh,
that question.
yeah, I had one more question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
And that, I'm very, it's so exciting to be involved with other people who have the same belief, because my introduction was when I was 12 years old, which was 70 years ago. And that was with Jess Stern. Do you remember Jess Stern, the author?
Yes.
But anyway, my question, because I've never been able to answer this, and maybe you've come across it, and that is, I have memories, very clear memories that were validated by my mother, because we only lived in a place 2 months, but I was only 14, 15 months old. And I can remember those incidents, and I could even draw her a map of where we lived. And I was just wondering, have you ever heard of a past life, or that has ventured over? Because my thoughts were pretty much adult thoughts, and I just, I've been confused all these years about where did that come from.
That's a great question. And Carol Bowman's book, Return from Heaven, answers all of those. If you have not read that, I highly recommend it. And in fact, I feel like reading that book prepared me for the reunion with my grandson. Because when my daughter was little, I did not realize that any of this either. I wasn't thinking about all of this. And so yeah, definitely pick up her book. Both books, Children's Past Lives and Return from Heaven. Return from
Okay.
Heaven is specifically about reunions, and many of the reunions are in the same family.
Okay, that's
From Heaven.
Return from Heaven. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you. And the other one?
Carol Bowman. Carol, the other book is called Children's Past Lives.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And Carol was a big skeptic before her kids started telling her all that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I talked to Carol quite a bit.
Yeah. Right. She she had her own past life memory, which she helped her with. She had a skin problem, and but she came at it from a very left and right brain approach. I also trained with her as well as Brian Weiss, and so I got to know Carol very well. And then she was a speaker at our 2022 Reincarnation Symposium, and in that one I actually got to speak with Chase Bowman also about 30 years later, what his memories of his past life, what was the effect on him as a kid growing up and then as an adult.
Carol, I want to ask you a question on behalf of the group or for me, but what was your favorite character in the book? And tell us a little bit why.
Oh, that has to be Lily. I resonate with Lily's personality so strongly. I feel like there's her personality of all the characters that are in the book, her personality and mine are probably the most similar. But also, one of the reasons why I love that story so much is she was the one who showed me about making a quantum leap. Now, I won't go into that in detail, but what happened is that because Lily was also a meditator, that she and I could communicate more deeply than some of the other ones who, some of them didn't have a meditation practice at all, like so many people. They were just living their ordinary lives. But Lily meditated, and so she tuned into me and I tuned into her. And what I discovered was that we were helping each other. So that's a whole, and I call that spiritual osmosis, that information that we are experiencing travels on the stream of consciousness and has an effect on both of us. And Pete Smith, who was our speaker in November at the book club, and then he was also a speaker at the symposium, he talks about this. But I was having an experience of this in 2002, well before I met Peter and knew about his work in 2015. And so I feel like it's, there's a thing they call simultaneous inspirations. And I feel like he's in Australia having his experiences. I was in Florida at the time having my experience, but they were so similar. So she's one of my favorites. And then the other thing I love about Lily, which has not been true for me in this lifetime, but I love the fact that it was true for her, was meeting the love of her life. And they're having a wonderful relationship and deep love.
That's beautiful. I also wanted to ask you a little bit more about soul family and how it's all connected for you.
Wow, that's a good one. Soul family to me supersedes biological family. Think about that. Our soul families are so connected that no matter what's going on in our biological families, because face it, we don't get along with all the members of our families, right? And sometimes there's a reason, a karmic reason for that as well. But what I find in soul families is that even when we challenge one another, we have this strong sense of that we're helping each other on our paths. And I feel like that there's a more conscious awareness of the unconditional love that connects us, because it's soul love.
Well, now let me ask you and everybody, I have had a couple of experiences where I ran into people and I knew them, complete strangers. I knew them. And in one other case, I got an electric shock when I touched them.
Ooh.
But only a couple times. I wonder if anybody else has had that experience.
I
Yeah.
have.
And were those connections, were they all good, or were
Oh,
some negative?
Yeah, in this life, as far as I have known them, they've been very good, yes.
This story is not in the book, but I'll tell you something that happened when I was doing a class about reincarnation. And I don't know why it dawned on me to say this, but I said something similar to what you were talking about, Peter, that we meet somebody and we have this instant connection with them, or we meet somebody and we have this instant, kind of feeling with them. And I said, by the way, if you look around the room, and there were about 40 people in the room, I said, if you look around the room and you feel one of those feelings, you know, think about that for just a moment. And then this girl stood up and she said, you know, I'm having that feeling with you. I feel very angry about you, towards you. And I don't know why. We had never met. And so I said, okay, that's very interesting. You know, we'll take a break in just a little bit and let me see if I can tune into that, because I am a medium and I do this thing called psychometry. And so as soon as I held her hands, I heard this song, Entre les Étoiles. And I knew that she was part of the lifetime with Anne Marie. Anne Marie was Belgian, but she was in France. And Entre les Étoiles was a song that they sang in school. Jean Marie, her real name was Hannah Maria, but they Romanized it so that they could assimilate as Catholics in France to hide their Jewishness. And so this girl, this woman who was in the class, was in Anne Marie's class, and the reason why she was angry at her was Anne Marie disappeared suddenly. And so, you know, sometimes when we have when we lose somebody like that, we don't know what happened to them. We feel angry about it, you know, part of the steps of grief. So yeah, it's wild.
It's a pretty shocking occurrence.
Yes. And here's another thing. In this lifetime, I met the person who killed Anne Marie.
Mm.
And that
Also,
was,
also places.
yeah.
Went to southwestern France where the Cathars were. I felt like I was home. So I must have had a life or two there, I would think.
Yeah, and that's the way I felt in the Summer Palace in Beijing, and Lei Jing-shou, one of the characters in Unstuck in Time, was one of the architects for the Summer Palace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Carol, I have a question that takes off from all this that you've discussed last few minutes. And it is about all these incarnations that you talk about in the book. Now, do you think all these past incarnations ever have like a roundtable meeting or communicate with each other?
I have not experienced multiple connections with them, except that time when I asked the universe, you know, who were those ghosts that scared me as a child, and they all showed up at one time. That was the one and only time that I've had a collective with them. And it was so funny. Their personalities were so strong. I write about that in the very beginning of Unstuck in Time. You know, this gypsy, the Marco Antonio, you know, he was really strutting his power. And then the gypsy woman steps in front of him, you know, just daring him. And so their personalities were really, really strong in that experience.
And so, taking off from that question, are you actively communicating with these different incarnations?
Say that again, please.
Are you communicating with these different incarnations yourself?
Continually. I thought once the book was done that, you know, okay, we've accomplished our mission. But no, they have continued to talk with me. In fact, I'm in the middle of a new edition for the book with this further communication. So we're redesigning the cover. We're going to be adding more of their stories and doing some editing. So yeah, that's going to
Yeah,
be,
that sounds wonderful. Uh,
yeah, that's
So
why
we have,
I found those illustrations that I shared earlier. That's part of the re-edit of the book.
yeah, that sounds just something I'm ex getting excited about and really looking forward to. Darcy has a question, and then John.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said something that puzzles me, and that is, and you know, as I said, I'm new to the group and have not done any much study on this, just had to experience this, and mine was through hypnosis. But if we're only one soul, how can you have a combination of them getting together? I mean,
Well, if
you know,
is a big little word. So my experience is that we are not just one soul. Now that might fly in the face of some people who have been studying reincarnation, but my experience has been that we are streams of consciousness. Some people call that soul, but above that, there is what I call, and some other people call it the same as well, an oversoul. And the oversoul kind of oversees the adventures of the various incarnations. So like Carl Jung talks about individuated entities. That's what I feel each incarnation is, an individuated experience of stream of consciousness.
is there any writing available about that?
I haven't found any. I'm working on it myself, how
I
to
was going,
explain.
yeah, I was going to say that's your next book.
Yeah, that will be coming up in I'm doing a cosmology series, and that uh concept will be coming up in that book. Yeah.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you, Marcy. And John, good to see you.
Good to be here. Actually, Darcy sort of stole my thunder. I was going to ask you about your sense of the oversoul that you mentioned in the book, but
Yeah. Well, let me explain Oversoul a little bit more.
Mhm.
So think about that, that being in oneness, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And then you decide that I'd really like to have an earthly experience. And so somebody brings out the manual and says, here's what you got to do when you enter the earthly experience. One of the things that you're going to do is you're not going to remember that you chose to go there, right? And so the first step is individuating as an oversoul. In my cosmology, my worldview of reincarnation, you individuate as an oversoul who is going to then have many incarnations to get to that place where you remember. And once you remember, now you've got to do a little remedial work on the mistakes that you made when you weren't remembering. And then also you pick up those memories of the good things that you worked on. So the skills, the talents. And for me in this lifetime, I wanted to be an architect. That before I knew anything about Lei Jing Shou, at 11 years old, I wanted to be an architect. I taught myself how to do perspectives, to draw, to draft. I was the first girl in high school to be accepted in the drafting classes. And I had to change to interior design because my dyslexia, I couldn't do the math for architecture the way they did it back then. All in divine order, because the type of architect that I wanted to be was architect, interior design, landscape design. So to me, this was not a difficult thing to do. And so I brought skills from that other lifetime into this one. And one of the other things that Lei Jing Shou did, besides being an architect for the emperors of China, was that they organized events. Think about that. I 5 years ago when I had the call to organize the symposium,
Hmm.
I knew that he was having a hand in that. He says, I'm going to help you make this happen. So, yeah, great question. Leslie, you have a question?
It's just a very brief comment. About 9 years ago, I wrote a novel in which there was like a place where people went and their all of their incarnations, or a certain number of them, worked together to see how they might help the one that was currently incarnated. And
Oh,
it just sort of came, and this reading your book has been very eye-opening for me, because I really, I didn't really know where that came from. I certainly didn't think it happened. So that's cool. Thank you.
We need to explore that more. I'm feeling a theme happening here. That's exciting. Makes me want to meditate with my peeps and say, hey, we talked about this in our group. Let's talk about this together. So thank you for that. I'd love to read that book.
Yeah, this year I thought I would like finally publish it.
You
Great.
should, Leslie.
Thanks.
Carol, could you talk a little bit more about bleed over?
Oh, that's a great one. Yes. So for many who are beginning to remember their past lives, bleed over often happens emotionally. You might have a reaction to something that's going on and you wonder, wait a minute, if you thought about it, you realize, wait a minute, that's not my reaction. So if it's not how I would typically react, where is that coming from? And when we can, and so I also am a photographer, and I worked in the dark room. When you overlay two pictures, you can create a double exposed picture. And so the way I look at bleed overs is when I sense a feeling that I know is not mine, then what I'll do is I'll get quiet. I'll imagine like being in the dark room, pulling the two negatives apart so that I can see what's in this negative, what's in that negative, and very clearly, and be able to parse out, whose feelings are what. So I hope that helps you understand. Now, sometimes bleed over will be like something comes out of my mouth that I know I would never say that. And then I have to, look around and say, who said that? And then realize, oh, if I listen carefully to the intonation, sometimes I'll even get the accent or particularly if it's a foreign language, I'll pick that up.
Is that kind of form of channeling for you?
I guess you would say that is, yeah. Yeah.
And can you maybe this would be a good little segue. When you were you talked about your backstory with being in court, dealing with what was happening in your life in this current lifetime, and you used some breath work to get through it. And maybe that would be helpful to just like quickly do a little teaching and how to do that when something comes up emotionally, or you feel you need a little moment to control how you might react based on what's happening or how you're ignited by the place or the person.
Yeah, that was a very cool experience, and that happened pretty early on. I want to say 1995 or 96. I was remembering Marco Antonio, and at the same time, I was working for the design job from hell. And I eventually had to take that boss to court. And um, I didn't realize that people might lie in court. And my ex-boss had his attorney tell the judge that he had fired me rather than my resigning because I found out he was doing unethical things. But he said he fired me because I kept talking about reincarnation and, blah, blah, blah. That just totally shocked me. And so here I'm having one of those bleed over moments, this reaction to what this person is saying. But fortunately, and I learned this at an interior design conference, it was a breath technique where from the neck up, you're very present to what's going on in the room. You're taking it all in, but from the neck down, you're doing what's called relaxation response technique. And so what that is from starting with the toes, constricting the feet, muscles, with the in breath, and then on the out breath, relaxing them, and then working your way all the way up to you get to the neck. Once I did that, now I could feel that fight or flight reaction settle out of my body. And then I could stand up and I could say to the judge that, first of all, that, comment about my being fired and leaving a reincarnation is not true, but I didn't have any proof with me at hand to validate that. And I said, but belief in reincarnation has nothing to do with this case. He just owes me money. It's not about reincarnation. And anyway, not only do I believe in reincarnation, but I'm a past life regression therapist because by then I was doing it on the side. And what was so neat for me was that I knew in that moment of speaking my truth calmly and without being vindictive, I knew that I had won the case, not the court case, but why I was there facing him. And it was so neat because I did lose the actual case, but very soon after that, I got a call that I had inherited more than double what the man owed me. So I had let it go in that court experience. And then boom, all of a sudden I had all of this money that I wasn't even expecting. So that was a great experience. And I, that's one of the reasons why I love meditation. My first meditation teacher was actually a student of Herbert Benson, who taught the relaxation response technique. And so that's one of the things I incorporate in my meditation practice and when I'm teaching. And I can do an abbreviated form for preparing for hypnotherapy as well. And, to be able to apply these things in everyday life, this is why I say the benefit of remembering these other lives can help you deal with situations in current life and deal with it from a higher perspective. Thank you for that question.
I have another question too. I mean, just for the group at large here, everyone that's read the book, I imagine that each of you have maybe felt something similar with each of the characters. And have you found that kind of story to show up in your life this lifetime, or something that just feels really familiar? And if you don't want to talk about it now, maybe something to write about and put on the Facebook page. But if you want to share, that'd be nice.
Yeah, or put it in the chat box thing.
Does everyone understand the question? Because for me, I felt, I mean, I loved the story of Lily. I mean, I wanted a whole novel about it because it was just so beautiful. You know, so there's little things that for me, like woke up, you know, certain things in the story that I was like, oh, I could see a similarity of having a lifetime like that as well. So just curious if any of you have kind of had like similar feelings of like, gosh, that feels awfully familiar, that sense of that.
Well,
Yeah.
we can probably let people simmer over, that question. And as they are wondering about the story and the resonance with any of the stories that Carol talks about in her book, I want to know, Carol, that there's got to be really profound moments, aha moments for you as you were um, writing this book, and really sort of going into the depth of each character, and then you know um, I'm sure as you were writing you were also becoming aware of the lessons each lifetime taught you, and so now you have this treasure trove of lessons. Are you able to apply some of these lessons in your current lifetime?
That's a powerful set of questions there. I think one of the biggest aha moments, and it came very early on, I did have to take a sabbatical when I was remembering Anne Marie's lifetime. You can imagine memories of the Holocaust were not the easiest memories to deal with. During my sabbatical, I remembered her death, but here's where the aha moment was. Immediately after her death, and I saw her spirit floating above the body, I witnessed her great compassion towards the man who had just killed her. Before that moment, I never dreamt that anything like that was possible. And it took me a while to process that, but I realized that she did that because in some ways, I think she was more evolved than I was at that moment. And that she just came from such unconditional love. And that has been something that has really gone with me throughout since I remembered her, that no matter what a person is doing, how awful that I might think that, their actions are, there's a part within me that knows how to love them unconditionally. And so that's my practice. If I don't know what's happening, if I don't understand my own reaction or other people's reactions, then I can come back to that moment and remember that beautiful, loving feeling and compassion that she had, and tap into a sense of peace. And so the process of writing, I highly encourage anyone who is doing regression therapy work. For my clients, I send them the recording. I tell them, re-listen to the recording, because you're going to gather more information than what you were even experiencing at the time. And you're so engrossed in that life that you're remembering, that everything else kind of fades away. So by being able to look at it sort of from a third person point of view, now you can get more. And what I discovered was when I would journal about the memories, it was like I had a 360-degree view, as opposed to just the view of looking through the past life entity's eyes. And not only did I have a 360-degree view, but very often I knew what other people were feeling or thinking. And so that process of journaling afterwards, that has served me very well. And in you know, in even in ordinary stuff that happens, I'll journal about it. I'll go through my process. You know, my logo for my business is always come back to the center, but it's also a mantra to myself to always come back to that centered place within myself. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and you know, looking at the diversity of experiences that you've had in these different incarnations, some of them so challenging that you know, in your backstory, you have actually described certain things which were like healing events that happened after you passed on. For example, I remember in Anne Marie's, you met Baba, and you were right, and you both had bread together, um, and it was really beautiful and healing. And so, as you are writing all this out in your story, did you actually feel healing happen within you?
Very definitely. This was a more powerful healing experience for me than, you know, I had done years of psychotherapy because of the trauma that I had experienced. But the regression work was so much more powerful than any of the psychotherapy. I'm not saying, you know, that psychotherapy is not good. When I finally met a transpersonal psychotherapist, and she understood what regression therapy was about, and she told me, you know, let's use that as a tool for your healing process. And then she helped me with some of the more pragmatic stuff, like communicating with my mother. Without her help, I don't think I would have been able to communicate with my mother in the way that I did. And so in this experience, it was so funny. I had just left my transpersonal therapist's office, and she had said that. And I'm literally driving and having this memory of I sensed I was about 3 years old. I could tell by the size of my hands. I could see my hands in this pressed against a window. And so about 3 years old, both excited and anxious at the same time, fearful kind of anxious. And so the next time I saw my therapist, I told her about it. And I said, I think this has to do with the past of this lifetime. And so she helped me draft a letter to my mother, giving my mother permission not to answer me, not to tell me anything, you know, just to let it go, but just to say to my mother, this is what I experienced in this vision. And, you know, can you help me understand it? Well, and we did it by email because my mother was starting to email, and we figured this would be an easier way for her to assimilate what I was telling her, and then reject it if she wanted to. And, you know, she and I did not communicate very well verbally at that point in time. So Anne figured, you know, let's talk to her by email. And so sure enough, I did. And lo and behold, my mother responded back to me and confirmed the image. I did, it's amazing how our minds can block things. Talk about blocking memories of past lives. We can block the memories of the past of this lifetime amazingly. So there I was, I think that had to be 2003, I guess. And so from the time I was 3 years old until that memory started coming up, I did not remember that we had run away from my father when I was 2.5, returned back when I was 3.5. And so my mother was able to confirm the whole thing.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
It's so important. I keep feeling it's so important to do the healing work, and all healers need healing. Everybody needs healing.
Yeah, and I feel like
For
these
sure.
past life memories are like, think about a diamond in the rough. So you have to knock away that roughness to be able to get to the diamond. And I feel like these past life memories, whether it's the past of this lifetime or the past of another lifetime, we've got to knock away those pieces to be able to get to the diamond. That kind of ties in with what Chris Beisch talked about, the diamond soul. And but think about it, when you do knock out those rough parts around the diamond, and then you got to go another step further to cut the facets very skillfully to be able to get a cut that shows the brilliance of the diamond. And I feel like that's what we're doing when we're healing, and when we're remembering those skills and talents that we have been developing in other lifetimes. Nothing's wasted.
Yeah.
So we can build on that. And so I feel like it has such benefits for us.
Jim, did you have a question?
I do. I didn't mean, I thought you were finished, and I didn't mean to interrupt. The you guys are having all these very deep things about all these things. I have kind of a more of a procedural question. I'm looking at my screen and I'm seeing a lot of people who do a lot of past life regressions with people. And I'm wondering, the thing that kept striking me about the book is the detail and the duration of the experience that Carol remembers. It wasn't like, I remember that one day I was doing this. It's like, and then this month, and then that month. And is this a common thing that other people have, that you do regressions for, that have really detailed recollections and over time? So that's my question.
Think about it. First of all, most people don't even remember their past lives. And I need to do a survey. Out of the people that do remember past lives, how many people remember more than 5? And then out of those people, how many people remember so much detail of their past lives? John Koenig's one of the few other people that I know of that has memories of many past lives and a lot of details. So his book, which was featured last year on our Reincarnation Book Club, that's an excellent read. My autobiographies. There's just a few other people that I know of who have remembered multiple lives.
Okay.
And and I feel like those of us who do are really drawn to share the memories with other people who maybe don't remember, but like Tiffany said, you might not remember your own past lives that have the same energy of the story, but when you hear a story, you all of a sudden connect with it. And I think that's one of the reasons we like movies and to read stories so much, that we can connect with those stories on so many different levels. And you know, for me, Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. I bet if I were to talk to him, that he would have some kind of inkling about reincarnation that inspired him to write that story. So that's another great question. And you know, it's one of the reasons why we do this symposium, and then, you know, the group regressions too, to help people remember more of their stuff. And we're sharing more of the process too. So people will, it's so much easier now than it was 33 years ago when I began remembering. The whole past life regression process has evolved, which I write about in my next book, The Cosmology of Reincarnation. And it's just really, really different. It's just like, think about, you know, the telephone. Even our early telephones had more capability than when they sent the men to the moon. And look at how much the telephone advances day by day. I can't even say year by year, because it's constantly advancing day by day. So I feel like it's part of the evolutionary process. And I see Wendy has a question.
Okay, so, and I just love this whole conversation. The romantic in me has a question for you about Lily. I'm wondering, and maybe I just missed something, because there's just a very few pages in a different lifetime that I haven't read, but everything else I did read. So maybe I missed this, but I'm wondering if in this life you feel that you have recognized the soul that was Ming Chao Li in that life.
I have not.
Okay. Yet.
Not yet.
Okay. I just, it was, I mean, the feeling when I'm just reading each one, there's very strong feelings that I, you know, as I'm reading each story, but in that story, I just felt that incredible bond and love. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to ask if she has met the soul that she might have soul recognition in this lifetime. Okay, that was my question.
It's really kind of funny, because my first husband's name was Li. Now, Ming Chao Li, in the Chinese way of saying names, Ming would be the last name, Chao Li would be his given name. But in this life, I've been married 3 times. So my first husband was Ming Chao, was Li. His friends called him Butch, but I would never call him Butch. I always called him Li. That was his given name. And yeah, so I'll tell you if that happens. That would make a wonderful wrap up to the story.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Does anybody else have any more questions? We could wrap up if you'd like. Carol, thank you so much for just doing such a wonderful job of elaborating and really bringing this soul group together, because it really does feel that way. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And also, I don't know if you'd like to do a little process or even like end with a poem.
Yeah, I did not include any of my poems in the book, but I wanted to share this one. I hope it will ring with those of you who may be remembering or who have remembering. And I call this poem, Who Will Listen? the images, the voices like dot, 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 and dash, 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 signaling a message across the cosmic telegraph. I am not dead, but I'm stuck. Help me. How can I refuse? I'll get no rest until I listen to their stories, as if listening is a kind of mystic salve for their poor souls. And listening affects me also, shattering all my beliefs about beyond recognition, stripping away the myths, although I didn't know they were myths at the time, leaving me naked in my own desert, climbing mogul after mogul, chasing mirage after mirage, following the voices, following the images, until I reach the oasis where souls wait for someone who will listen. Listen. Like Scheherazade, I tell their stories, each one different, each one with its own lesson, each one a reflection of some part of me. Who will listen? Listen. And so, unlike some mediums who help people, just go to the light, I was always guided to listen to what they have to say. Even in current lifetime, so often we feel unheard. We feel that we're not safe to talk about things in coming from our truth. And by my taking the time, this has been a huge investment of time to listen to all of these characters, but it was so rewarding. And so that's been part of my job in this lifetime. I call it my dharma to pay attention to them. So I wanted to just end with sometimes we can't remember what the karma is that we meet up with people. And the last few years that has happened, and even for myself, even though I remember a lot, there are times when I just, feel so blocked about remembering. And then there's also times when the other person is not willing to meet you halfway. And that makes it even tougher. And so one of the things I did to help with that was to practice Ho'oponopono. So I just wanted to share a really brief meditation about Ho'oponopono. For those of you who do not know that word, it's a Hawaiian word which comes from ho'o, to make, and pono, which means right. And when you repeat pono, it means to make doubly right. In other words, you're making right with yourself and you're making right with others. And when you become right with others, you become right with yourself. When you become right with yourself, you become right with others. It's magical. It helps me get through so much. So by saying and feeling the power of the Ho'oponopono phrases, we replace our conscious and subconscious opinions and prejudices with the energy of aloha, our true nature of reality, true love. So we can start from a fresh place with everyone and everything. Everything has a quality of vibration, including our thoughts, our spoken words, and our actions. And these thoughts, words, and actions flow out into an endless ocean of energy, of which we're all part of the waves, and return into our lives things that are similar in quality to those thoughts, words, and actions. But more immediately, it's creation. We are creating the circumstances of our lives and with every thought, word, and deed. And the power of that creativity is multiplied by the number of people thinking, saying, and doing the same things. This is why we do these groups. So let us call on the divine right now. May we release all energies, thoughts, words, and actions through all time, in all dimensions, not align with our true nature, aloha. May we be filled, surrounded, and protected with the light of love. May we create all energies, thoughts, words, and actions through all time and dimensions filled with aloha. May divine love flow in us, as us, through us. Let us be channels of light, of love, and truth. Ho'oponopono. So whether you remember past lives or not, remember unconditional love and let it guide you.
Beautiful, Carol. What a way to end.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
And a beautiful way to begin this year.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And we next month, we're going to have a group regression with Tiffany is going to be our facilitator, and she's going to help us remember how to work with our dreams. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you, Tiffany.
Very excited for that one. Love
Yep.
dream.
And thank you, Smita and Tiffany, for co-hosting tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
This was our honor, and it was a lot of fun. Thank you for trusting us.
Well, you did it, man, really fantastically. You really are masterful at it, the two of you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I mean it.
We're in good company.
we are. Thank you, everybody, coming together for this beautiful evening to share in Carol's book, because it really was a great book. I couldn't put it
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
Great
you.
questions, and it was just wonderful to Carol, thank you so much for the beautiful, in-depth, and very thoughtful answers that you gave to, which I would, it doesn't surprise me, of course, but yeah, I'm looking forward to going back over a number of chapters again. Yeah. And your next book. And
don't forget the audio recordings that Carol has been posting, which when I've been going out on my walks, that's what I listen to.